I got this book box at Hobby Lobby, 40% off. So I think I paid like $6 for it. Perfect, right? And I'm painting it the color Casement by Fusion. This paint is amazing. It has both a primer and a sealer, and this is going to prepare our surface for some transfers. And all I need is just one coat. I'm making sure to get the inside and the back, the whole box. The transfers we're using today are from IOD's latest release, and the photo of the lady there is from the St. Wen. And I'm looking through Emily Claire, and I'm going to choose a few images from this one. I'm separating these images. For now, we're going to use the outer. This is going to wrap around our lovely lady here. And so I'm going to remove my image from the backing sheet and set it right into the center of our book cover, and then begin rubbing with my transfer stick. I'm sure you all know how to use transfers by now, so I'm just going to skip ahead to removing the vellum and then burnishing my image. And then I'm going to add this right to the side of my book so it looks like it's the title and create a more realistic look. Now to decorate the back of the box, I'm going to use my lace stamp and I'm going to ink it up real good. And all I'm using is the smaller design. And you want to make sure to keep one hand on your stamp at all times while working with the other hand just to burnish it. And also you could use a brayer. Just make sure not to push down too hard because you will smudge your ink and you don't want to do that. Lift up real quick and look at how pretty that is. Off camera, I heat set it using my embossing gun, and now I'm going to set this beautiful image of these flowers right over the top of it. And then again from the St. Wen book, I'm adding this word Paris, and it has really pretty scroll along the sides. And then I'm adding some florals to the inside of the book. And off camera, I sealed in my transfers, and that's it for this. I'm going to have it next to my bed. I'm going to store my rings and my bracelets in at nighttime. I'm going to start by priming these spoons that I got at Goodwill with Paint Couture's 2-in-1 Premium Primer in the color gray. And this is going to prepare our surface for paint. I'm thinking that these spoons have been used for cooking, so if there's any oils or anything, I just want to make sure to seal them in before I go in with my paint. And then I went in with Casement. At first I thought I wanted them the color white, but I wasn't really liking that. So then I took some texture additive, that same salt wash, and mixed it in with the color celery and applied that to both spoons. You don't necessarily need to have salt wash. You can mix this with some baking soda to get a similar result. For these, I'm going to apply with a sponge, and I love the extra detail that this creates, and you get so many more peaks and raised areas with this technique, and it really helps build a lot of texture onto the surface. I got these beautiful napkins from decoupagenapkins.com. I'm going to separate my plies and use half of this napkin, one for each one of my spoons. Or should I say spoon and a spatula. And for this one, I'm going to off center it a little bit and use my liquid patina to apply it. And I don't mind wrinkles. I actually want wrinkles for this because these spoons are going to look like they are really old and been around for a long time. And I prefer to use water when I'm decoupaging. You don't have to. It's just how I prefer to do it. But I use a lot of different techniques for things. I like to mix it up when I'm crafting. Just applying one even layer, and I'm going to let this dry before finishing the next step. And for this one, I'm applying it right down the center. I let it dry, remove the excess, and then I added crackle step 1, waited 30 minutes, and then added crackle step 2. And this is going to add all kinds of cracks and just make it look nice and old. I personally like to use an embossing gun and speed the drying process up because it's going to add so many more crackles. Then I took my Van Dyke Brown. This is a glaze by Paint Couture, and I'm going to go over all of my spoons with this. And I forgot to mention, I added that crackle all over my spoons. And so we're going to have cracks everywhere. And I'm going to use my Van Dyke Brown all over both of them, wiping back what I want, and also using a stippling motion as I go. And that just adds more texture and variation. I like these to look grungy. If you don't like that look, you could totally skip the crackle in this step altogether, or just use a lighter glaze. Then I added a hanger using some twine, added some lace ribbon from the Dollar Tree, and also some chiffon ribbon. Then I pulled out this other lacy ribbon and added that as well. I zip tied them together and added a flower to the center, and that is it for this one. I think these came out so pretty. I can't wait to hear what you guys think of these projects today. And make sure to check out the playlist and our wonderful host. I'll have them all linked in the description box. And as always, I love hearing from you, and I'm always so excited to chat it up with you in the comments. I'm starting by painting this sign, the color Ash by Fusion. This is both a primer and a sealer. I gave it 2 coats, and now I'm going to go in with IOD's transfers. This booklet is called Clementine, and I'm going to choose this one botanical image. I'm not going to bother having you watch me burnish this, but I did that off camera, and now I'm going to use this ephemeral stamp. I hope I'm saying that right, and some white ink, and I'm going to go all over this sign with it, just gently pressing and making sure to keep one hand on my stamp at all times. And I'm not going to reapply ink. I'm just going to keep tapping it here and there. I want that faded look. I want this to look worn. And now I'm going to take, I'll make sure I list my molds down below, but I have my clear mold, my enlightening etchings mold, and I forget what the other one is, and using a quick set resin, equal parts, and I'm going to try my best to work with these while they're still warm, but I'm going to form a frame around this. So I'm going to do some cutting and just piecing apart these castings. I end up using everything, but I'm just going to, make my own designs. So what's really nice about fresh castings is that they're still flexible, so you can gently bend them and shape them however you want. And if you wait a little too long, that's totally okay. You can always warm them up with an embossing gun to soften them again. Right now, I'm just having a little fun with the layout, flipping pieces around and playing with the positioning until it feels right. I don't glue anything down until I'm happy with my overall design. I'm using my Gorilla gel glue for this and just putting some along the back and just holding it for a second. This sets up very quickly, so you don't really have to apply any hot glue to keep it in place. Like I said, it only just takes seconds. So I'm going to continue cutting and let you watch as I put this together. I needed to duplicate a few of those castings, so I pulled out my clear mold again, and I just used a few of my other molds, took those out. That way you can use up the resin, and I also like having extra pieces in my stash for future projects. If you notice this, when it's really warm, when your castings are really warm, they appear larger. Look at the difference in size. And as this hardens, it will shrink up to the same size as the other. I just wanted to point that part out. And with this mold, we're just using the swirls from them. I have plenty of cherubs in my stash, so I didn't really need to cast any of those, but these beautiful swirls we're going to use along the top on each side. And I am going to do some trimming with these. I'm being really mindful not to glue any of the pieces down while they're still warm. I want to make sure everything is fully cured and the right size first, because if you glue them down with super glue while they're still warm, they won't cure to the correct size, and resin tends to shrink a bit as it finishes its curing process. I want to take a minute to share my vision for this piece, because this is a style I've always been really drawn to. I'm going for that vintage black and gold old world look, something that feels dramatic but still timeless. This kind of design really takes inspiration from old world interiors, especially from the late 1800s into the early 1900s, when ornate details, rich dark backgrounds, and warm gilded finishes were so popular. Back then, pieces were meant to feel collected over time rather than perfectly matched, and craftsmanship was really celebrated then. I love that sense of history and character, that feeling that a piece has lived a life before it ever comes into your home. I also love to imagine pieces like this living somewhere, not just on a wall, but in a space with a story. I can picture this hanging in an old French home, maybe in a quiet study or a softly lit hallway, surrounded by tall bookshelves, warm wood floors, and layers of collected treasures. It feels like something you'd see in a home of a writer, an artist, or someone who appreciates history and detail, maybe even in a period film where every piece in the background has an intention or a meaning. That's always how I approach my designs. I want them to feel like they belong to a life, not just a moment. I really hope that as you're watching me work, you're able to see just how much you can do with just a few designs by separating castings, rearranging them, and really making them your own. It's such a great way to take some elements and turn them into something completely personal and one of a kind. And that's one thing I love so much about redesign and IOD molds. It's just endless what you can do with your castings. Now that I have my castings all glued down secure, I'm taking that same paint in the color ash. Again, it's a primer and a sealer, and I'm painting all of my castings everywhere. I'm getting and all the little details. I want to completely cover my castings with this, and all it needs is one coat. I'm slowly migrating all of my paints over to Fusion. As I run out of a color, I replace it with the Fusion's version. It's honestly one of the best paints I've ever worked with, and I'm definitely a little smitten with it. I'm even convinced it's better than Paint Couture's, and I don't say that lightly. I've used a lot of different paints over the years, so when something truly stands out, it really means something to me. After I got my castings painted, I then brought that black along the sides. And after that, I'll go in with Paint Couture's bronze metallic paint and paint all of my castings completely. I just love the look of bronze over black. It adds so much depth and richness. And for me, it really captures that old world French inspired feel that I'm really trying to recreate. And this is bronze metallic paint. I love their metallics. There's so many to choose from, and I just think they're so fun to work with. I do 2 full coats, and I bring that bronze all along the sides so it looks like a frame. I put some of that gold in these swirls here on each side. I didn't like how that looked, so I took out my black paint and I'm going over that, and I really like how that looks now that it's all covered up. And this is the finished piece. I am in love with it. I think it's everything that I was trying to recreate. Let me know what you think of this one. All right, I've had this in my stash for a minute. I paid, I think, $6. Yep, $6 for it, and it's a really nice heavy wood. So I cleaned it up and I went over the whole thing with Waverly's chalk paint in the color celery. I gave it 2 coats. The first coat I had added salt wash to it, and I didn't realize that I wasn't filming. So I let that dry and then I went over it with just the chalk paint. And I'm taking out this paint inlay by IOD. I'll try to make sure that I put the name in the description. So I made sure my paint was nice and wet, and I sprayed my inlay, and I'm putting it paint side down. Now, these can be a little tricky if you're looking for a perfectly uniform look. Paint inlays probably aren't the best choice. You can actually use them up to 3 times, and each time you'll get a slightly different result. But if you love worn, time-touched look, these are right up your alley then. I'm using a soft microfiber rag to gently push the paint into the inlay into the paint. Then doing a little trimming. I want to make sure that my inlay covers my entire board. But just spritzing with water and then using my microfiber rag to then push the inlay into the surface. This does sit for a few hours, and then I spritz it again with water and then let it sit for about 30 seconds and pull that inlay back. Now, if you have any resistance, just wet it again. You don't want to just go yanking on this because you'll ruin your inlay and some will be attached to your surface. I'm going to dry this real quick, and then I'm going to take out my traditional pots. Transfers by IOD, and I love these. They got the black and the blue, but for this I'm going to choose the black and just cut this out. And I'm going to cut, like, I'm going to separate this transfer. You'll see here in a second. And I'm going to arrange it how I want it to look. Before I applied these transfers, I took this out back in my shed. I have an attached shed, and I sprayed it with this Rust-Oleum's clear matte sealer before applying this. And it's really cold here, so I mean, it's not like I could take it outside to do it, but I wanted to make sure that I sealed it in before I did this next step. And then just burnish it down with a backing sheet. And this stamp, stencil, I got at Walmart last year, and I'm just using the laurels here and Paint Couture's embossing medium, just spreading it out with this spatula, just getting all of the designs, and I just don't want to get the bee and the writing down below. And of course, I'm going to skip the flowers. Lift it gently, and look at that. Isn't that so pretty? This ended up drying overnight, and now I'm going to go over it with Minwax clear gloss. And this is a polyacrylic, a beautiful sealer. I love this stuff. And just do all over the sides, the back, everything. I love this one. I am so happy with how this came out. And this is something that I hope I'll be able to find a place for after the Christmas season. Next, I paid $10 for this card box that I got at Goodwill, and it has some imperfections, just a slight crack along the top, and this hook is a little fiddly, but thankfully these letters pulled right off with a breeze. I'm assuming someone made this with like their Cricut. I don't know, but it was barely on there. And there's a slight crack, if you can see that there. So I washed it all down, and I paint it in the color Dusk by Waverly. But before I do that, I'm going to start casting some molds using quickset resin. I got my favorite clear mold out, my Victoriana, and a few others. And of course, when I'm using resin, I make sure that I have other molds out, even if I'm not going to use them today. I will use those castings at some point. Then I'm taking my dad's air dry clay and a backing sheet that I just keep in my stash for when I work with clay, and using some cornstarch and just flattening out that clay. But for now, I need to cover this hole, and I decided to use one of the jumbo craft sticks that you can get at Walmart, and some Titebond Quick and Fit wood glue, and just a dite of hot glue to keep it in place. And I'm putting that right over the top. And I'm gonna use that same Titebond Quick and Thick, and I'm going to add this to the back of my castings. I'm going to cover the whole top here with the clay. So I'm going to be pressing pieces together, and I don't want this to look all neat and tidy. This is going to be an old piece, one that's been around for years and years. And so there's going to be lots of imperfections, and that's what's going to make this piece beautiful. So I'm just tearing as I go and using my roller to help the clay pieces kind of, blend together. I want those cracks to be visible. I don't want things to be all smooth. I want them to be blended, but I don't want perfections. Those little variations and seams are what makes this feel old, and that it has a story instead of a brand name. I'm going to add a little bit of water as I go. I don't want big cracks forming, and the moisture really helps the clay relax and bond together better. I know you can see where I use that craft stick, but I'm not worried about that at all. That'll disappear in one of the next steps. This is really about making the top stronger overall, and then also contributing to the look that I'm going for. But I do take a knife and just kind of clean the edges up a little bit. That way there's not like rough chunks hanging over the edges. Now that I have my clay pieced together, I'm taking IOD stamps and pressing impressions into the surface of the clay. This helps all of the different sections complement one another and really ties the design together, even though nothing is meant to be perfect. Those layered textures and handwork patterns give such a nod to old French world decor, where you see carved details and surfaces that feel collected, worn, and gently softened over time, adding so much depth and character. Next, I'm going to take out this other mold. I know I'm going to botch the name. I think it's Salon Parisian Grand Chateau mold. Oh boy. Sorry, I am not good with these fancy names, but I'm going to just cast one of these. Look at how beautiful this is. This is like a close second in my favorite molds. My Claire mold is my absolute favorite. Anyway, I am covering the back here with some more Titebond Quick and Thick, and I got a little bit too much, so I'm taking a baby wipe and wiping that back and then placing my casting back in its place. I'm just cleaning up that wood glue, and then, okay, so I have my clear mold and that piece from my Victoriana mold and a few of those pretty birds. So again, with this one, I'm going to start cutting away and separating some of these pieces. And I'll just let you watch as I put this together. Okay, now I'm ready to go in with the color Dusk, but as I'm putting it on, it's far too thin. I didn't prime my surface, so my next option is to take some salt wash. So I mixed in a couple tablespoons of salt wash to I used 1 tablespoon of salt wash and quite a bit of paint. And there's no measuring to this. You just mix until your eyes are happy. And I like mine relatively thick, and the longer it sits, the thicker it gets. So I'm going to mix this real well and just start stippling and brushing. And I end up giving this about 2.5 coats, because I really want to build up some texture here. And so the whole piece kind of, fits. We got the top there that's made of clay, and so I want to make the rest of it like it's all one cohesive piece. I'm then going to angle my brush and gently sweep over those raised areas just to soften the peaks a little bit. Just kind of take some of the sharpness off. I let that dry for about an hour. Salt wash dries really quickly, and then I just went over it with my second coat. And I didn't really do a third coat, but I did just stipple some on here and there. So 2.5 coats. I don't want to paint the inside, so I'm cleaning up along the sides. And then that ended up drying overnight. So I'm going to go over the whole thing with some white wax and a paintbrush. This is by DIY, and I'm going to go over my whole box with this, pushing it down into all the impressions. And because there's a lot of texture with the salt wash, it just makes this box have the prettiest soft blue hue to it. It's a stunning piece. And I usually go pretty dark and grungy, so this was a fun change for me. I'm doing this in sections, applying my white wax and then taking a soft microfiber rag and just wiping back as much as I want. Lastly, I'm going to go over it with Sweet Pickins clear wax, and this is just another added layer, to seal everything in, but it also will pull back a little bit more of that white for me. and just wipe it all back after about 30 minutes. I really love how this turned out. That soft powdery blue. It just reminds me so much of old French decor. Let me know what you think of these pieces and if you have a favorite today. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you know when I post a new upload. Thank you for spending a bit of your day with me. Until the next one, bye.